Hi, everyone. My name is Christa of Practical Astros. I am here for the Asteri Sofia Kairos weekly astro forecast. So I am flying solo today. I put the image of the Queen of Wands and the Fool there. That's the energy that I'm bringing in. I'm going to look at the astrology for March 4th through March 10th. We work Wednesday to Wednesday because that's Mercury day. So it's a mercurial week. So I have here the week's transits. So we have the Sun trine Jupiter on March 5th. Venus goes into Aries on March 6th. Mercury, which is retrograde, will Kazemi the Sun on March 7th. Venus will conjoin Saturn on March 8th. Mercury will trine Jupiter on March 9th, and Jupiter will go direct on March 10th. Quite a week. Lots of busy things going on. So this first one here, the Sun trine Jupiter on March 5th. We have the Sun here at 15 degrees, Jupiter in Cancer at 15 degrees. Both of these are in water signs. The Sun's in Pisces. And when the Sun and Jupiter trine, it's usually like a little signal that Jupiter is either going to go retrograde or go direct. So Jupiter's going to go direct a few days after this. With trines are the nature of Jupiter. Water signs flow. So when we have a Jupiter trine in a water sign, it's extra flow. Jupiter's been retrograde for a couple of months now, and going forward in a water sign where it's exalted in Cancer, flowing with the Sun and all the other planets that are over there in Pisces, which is Venus and Mercury and Mars, I expect a lot of momentum, a lot of change, a lot of forward movement of an area of life, most likely going to be the Cancer area of life, but maybe also the Sun, and then pulling in the other Scorpio, the other water sign, which is Scorpio, that triad of water in your chart, those areas of life to have swift forward motion. So if there's been some kind of recirculation of things, slowing down of things, or things having to be redone, I mean, we're in a Mercury retrograde, so we're still going to have a little bit of that. But an exalted planet like Jupiter going forward, we have those early signs of what that might be when the Sun trines it on March 5th. So from March 5th to March 10th, when it trines it and then it goes forward, I just imagine there to be starting to be shifting of momentum of those areas of life. Trines are supportive. So they're supportive through flow. So a clearer channel of communication, a clearer flow between the Pisces and Cancer houses. If you're a Cancer or Pisces rising, this just involves you, the ascendant. It involves you as the character in your story, of maybe having a bit more support just for you in your life. If you're a Pisces rising, the Cancer is your 5th house, so maybe it's support through the creative projects that you do, or support for or from your children. Just having that watery flow of a trine is kind of a lift that might be welcome, having had some difficulties with the Mercury retrograde, because even with Mercury retrograde happening a couple times a year, it usually does cause a little bit of hiccup. So within this hiccup time of Mercury retrograde, having this flow of the Sun trining Jupiter, I think is kind of an early sign of the direction that things will be moving in. So then the next day we go into Venus and Aries. So right after the Sun trines Jupiter, Venus will have been trining Jupiter the whole time it's been exalted in Pisces, but now it goes into a place where it is unfamiliar. Venus rules the opposite of Aries, it rules Libra. So it's not at home. It's considered exiled here in Hellenistic astrology. Exile is a harsh word, but it defines it. It means that you're not at home, and there can be some vulnerability when you're not at home. There can also be some liberation. Venus going into Mars's sign of Aries is kind of a fiery, empowering, bold, adventurous, maybe edge-seeking, boundary-seeking, adventurous, frontier sort of attitude for Venus. But she's going to go into a conjunction with Neptune and Saturn pretty immediately. I imagine that this might be like a little trip right there on the threshold as she runs into that fiery temple of Aries, but then is immediately eclipsed by the connection with Neptune, and then may be held into some sort of restriction with Saturn. She's going to conjoin Saturn in 2 days, but as soon as she enters the sign, she's within a couple of degrees. So I feel like this will tint her entire transit of Aries for the spring while she's in the sign. When Venus goes into Aries, though, it will bring Venusian themes, even with that occlusion and restriction of Saturn, she still brings her Venusian gifts, brings that light, brings that love and desire and want to connect into that Aries place in your life. So look for the beauty that Venus may bring into the Aries sector for you. The next day we have Mercury, which is retrograde in Pisces, will Kazemi the sun. So it goes into the heart of the sun. This is a part of the process of Mercury retrograde. We'll have another Mercury Kazemi after it goes forward. But this retrograde one is kind of like this midway point between when it went retrograde and when it will go direct. So Mercury, when it's in the heart of the sun, finds some sort of truth in that throne room of the sun. The word Kazemi means in the heart of. So if we imagine the sun as a temple, the sun as this solar illuminating, intellectual, soulful temple, and Mercury is having to return back to the center temple room of the sun. What sort of illumination will Mercury get here? And you can apply that to your own life by choosing this day on March 7th to sit in reflection and sit in stillness. You can reflect on the area of Pisces in your chart. You can just sit and see what information, what intelligence is given to you. When we have this stillness of sitting with moments like this, we can glean a lot of information just from the sitting still and not having the distraction, not multitasking, not trying to force some sort of insight through our hands into our journal, but just sitting and receiving what sort of information Mercury is receiving by being there in the heart of the sun. This is a part of a purification and a reset for Mercury in Pisces. Mercury is not at home in Pisces, just like Venus is not at home in Aries. And so there's a little bit of exile. There's a little bit of disempowerment for the way that Mercury prefers to behave, prefers to act. It doesn't have all the tools that it usually likes to implement when it's in Virgo, the opposite sign of Pisces. But that just means that you get to find more poetic and inventive ways to operate in a mercurial way. So this can be related to money, merchants, mercantile, all those kind of are coming from the same etymological source. You can look at it through communication and technology. Some people experience this through just like physical technology, like your phone and your printer and your car and your computer. And, some people see this in more emotional technology, this emotional connection, having misunderstandings, feelings getting hurt by taking the wrong thing, like in a text message where you can't read tone. It's like there can be these little bubbles of disruption that happen during a Mercury retrograde. And when it's Kazemi, at this moment of Kazemi, you can get some insights of like maybe what are the missing pieces that help soften or smooth out the wrinkles that Mercury retrograde may be causing. The next day on March 8th, we'll still have that Mercury very close to the sun, but then we're also experiencing Venus conjoined Saturn. Now, Venus will have a conjoined Neptune the day before, but this one, Venus, Saturn, when they come together, is notable. Saturn is in fall in Aries, and Venus is in exile in Aries. So they're kind of like two refugees in Aries coming together. Saturn exalts in Venus, a sign of Libra. And so there is a little bit of symbiosis between these two. Saturn is that planet of separation and wisdom through time and mastery. And Venus is a personal planet. It orbits closer to us. It signals shorter periods of time, and it says yes to things while Saturn says no to things. And so it's them coming to some sort of diplomatic agreement while they're both refugees in Aries. So it has an intensity to it, but an intensity that there's something to work with. I like Venus, Saturn together. And in Aries, it'll highlight that. It'll highlight their differences in your Aries house. So you'll have this beauty and this desire to connect in Aries while Venus is there. While also you'll have this, I have to do it alone. I have to do it my own way. I'm going to be operating by myself, sort of restriction and astringency of Saturn. If you can find a medium between these two, how do I provide structure by knowing what my limitations are with Saturn, but also invite some sort of softening and bring in a little bit of that fiery desire within those restrictions by bringing in that fiery Venus? You'll see this come to form. Venus goes into Aries 2 days before, but it really gets crystallized here on March 8th when they conjoin together. So we have on March 9th, we have Mercury trining Jupiter. This is happening the day before Jupiter goes direct. And I like Mercury as a retrograde planet, having gone through the heart of the sun, getting some of the secrets of the sun when it's Kazemi a few days before. Right before Jupiter goes direct, it kind of passes the notes of what it gathered while it was in Pisces. So we have this retrograde Mercury trining retrograde Jupiter right before Jupiter goes forward. It's almost like this missing key that Jupiter needs before it can go forward. What sort of emotional, poetic information does Mercury have there over in Pisces that it passes over to Jupiter so that Jupiter can take that message and go forward tomorrow? Jupiter rules Pisces, and so there's this connection that Mercury has to Jupiter in Cancer. It's kind of bringing some of the information to Jupiter, but also allowing that connection between the Jupiter ruled Pisces and Jupiter itself. The decan that Jupiter is in is Mercury ruled. It's the Cancer 2. It's shown as the Three of Cups in Tarot. The Three of Cups shows three women with their glasses, goblets, chalices, cups lifted up in celebration as they dance, and there's plentiful fruit around them, and it shows fertility and movement. And to me, it kind of brings in that flow, that abundance, that joy, that celebration, that community that Jupiter in this decan especially kind of speaking of. Jupiter goes direct in this decan, and so the information that Mercury is saying, the poem that Mercury is reciting to Jupiter is kind of what Jupiter will be speaking loudest on as it stations direct. It will take that as it moves through Cancer before it goes into Leo in the summer. And then we finish off with Jupiter going direct. So now we have Jupiter going direct on March 10th. We experience the trine with the sun on the 5th. And now that it's direct, it's really carrying in all of those echoes that maybe you began to see some sort of forward movement in your Cancer and Pisces and Scorpio house, but particularly in the Cancer house. If you have something in Cancer at the 15th degree, when a planet stations retrograde or direct on a particular degree, it can kind of be like the finger pointing specifically to an area of your chart. So let's say that you have a 15-degree Cancer MC. It really speaks to that most visible part of your chart. Say you have Venus here at 15 degrees. Jupiter stationing to go direct at that 15th degree really does put an emphasis on those themes of love and having a direct motion of this exalted greater benefic. I just imagine it and visualize it as these floodgates opening up after months of reflection through the retrograde, through all of the transits that it has been dealing with, having this forward plan of where to go from here. At this moment of directness, the ruler of Cancer, which is the moon, is at 17 degrees Sagittarius, which is ruled by Jupiter. So they have this mutual reception. They can't see each other by traditional sight because they are in signs averse to each other. But it's almost like you knowing, maybe I can't see this dear friend of mine, but I know that they have my back and I have theirs. And even if we don't have eyes on each other, I know that they are safe and they are supportive of me. And that's kind of what this mutual reception between these two speaks of. Cancer is ruled by the moon and Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, and they've kind of swapped rulers. But the bonus is that Cancer is the place where Jupiter exalts. And so it's like a little extra bonus of beautiful Jupiterian blessings. And so hopefully we see some forward positive movement in things that have been slowed down, or if we've had to retrace some steps in the Cancer area of our life, having some sort of forward momentum when it goes direct. Again, I think that we will see echoes or hints of this on the 5th when it trines the sun, and it will lead up to this moment of the 10th. And then it will be direct until it goes into Leo later this summer. And that's it for the week. Thanks everybody for joining. And we will be back next week with me and most likely Shauna of Smart Astro. But again, thanks for joining for the weekly forecast, and we will see you next time. Bye.